Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, and welcome to the second in our six-part webinar series in partnership with the Mid-Southwest Economic Engine, Carbon Fit and Innovate UK. Today's webinar should take about 45 minutes. We don't want to take up all of your lunchtime, and it will also be available to view on the Mid-Southwest website after we finish up today, and I'll share the link for that as well. So today we'll be covering the second topic of the series, which will be focusing on carbon auditing and assessing your carbon footprint. Today's session will be delivered by Carbon Fit's Senior Carbon and Energy Procurement Manager, Aaron Ewens, and Carbon Fit are the delivery partner for this project across the Mid-Southwest region and have a team with over 20 years experience in this area of expertise. They're a group of chartered engineers who've developed the Carbon Fit software to address the issues faced by clients around carbon calculating and to help simplify carbon reporting. And you'll have an opportunity to meet many of them during the six-part webinar series. So to all of you here joining us today, whether you're just beginning your net zero journey and need a carbon reduction plan, or whether you're looking to accelerate your journey through net zero solutions such as supply chain analysis or green energy procurement, Carbon Fit will definitely have a solution for you. These webinars are part of the Mid-Southwest Region's Net Zero programme, which is well underway in partnership with Armagh, Banbridge, Craigavon, Mid-Ulster and Fermanagh and Omagh councils, alongside delivery partner Carbon Fit. The programme seeks to support micro and SMEs in the Mid-Southwest region with their net zero ambition, with a particular focus on those operating across three key sectors, and they are advanced manufacturing and engineering, agri-food and construction. There are also three main avenues of support available, which include the webinars, which we're here today joining, the breakfast meetings, and dedicated one-to-one support with Carbon Fit, which offers bespoke carbon footprints and action plans. And that is focused more so on those three key sectors that we've just mentioned. Phase 2 is now open, so you can register your interest for that via the website, which is midsouthwestraregion.org/net-zero-transformation. The next breakfast meeting is in Craigavon on September the 5th, followed by Enniskillen on October 17th, and both of those events will run from 9 AM until 11:30 AM and will feature speakers from local businesses, service providers and finance providers, and spaces are available to book as well via the Mid-Southwest Region website that I've just shared. So the six-part webinar series will cover 6 topics in total. We have already covered our What is Net Zero, which will be available via the website if you didn't already catch that. Today we will be covering our carbon audit. And as you can see via the slide, we will also be looking at setting targets, engaging your partners, renewable technologies, and continuous monitoring. And each of these 6 topics has been designed to help you create a building block approach to guide your business through a better understanding of its current baseline, and will give you the practical skills you need to help measure and monitor a useful carbon reduction plan that can be utilised as part of your business sustainability journey. So before we hand over to Aaron, can I just share this QR code for our feedback form today? So if you could all just take a snapshot of that on your devices at the moment. You are able to provide feedback during the session, or if you prefer to wait until the end. Of course, all feedback is most welcome. So I'll just give you a few moments there to try and take a snapshot of that. Okay, great. So there is a lot to cover today on the topic of carbon auditing and understanding your current carbon footprint. And today's webinar will cover the background to different methodologies and tools that are used for carbon auditing, as well as taking you through some useful resources which you can use to help within your own business. The team will also take you through different utility bills and help you understand what information you need from those to calculate your carbon footprint. And We will be joined by our guest today, Steph McAvoy, to discuss the importance of carbon auditing and what it means to her. Then we will also close with a few workbook activities and an interactive Q&A as well. So you'll have the opportunity to share your questions via the Q&A just at the top of the screen. So if you could just put them in as we move throughout, I'll keep a wee eye on those and we'll have an opportunity to answer those at the very, very end of the session. So now I am going to hand over to Aaron and let him guide you through today's session.
Thanks, Danielle. Afternoon, everyone. I'm Aaron, Senior Energy Procurement and Carbon Manager here at CarbonFit. So I'm going to start off with the methodologies, otherwise known as the starting point of carbon emissions reporting journey. Essentially, a methodology is a system of methods used in a particular area of study or activity, and you can see the main methodologies used here on screen. So to begin with, the first one is the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, otherwise known as the GHG. It's the most widely used international accounting tool for government and business leaders. It helps you understand, quantify and manage greenhouse gas emissions. The GHG protocol provides a comprehensive framework for measuring and managing emissions from operations, supply chains and your products. It is essential for ensuring consistency and transparency in carbon reporting. Moving on then, you have your ISO 14064. It's a globally recognized standard that specifies principles and requirements for designing, developing, managing and reporting greenhouse gas inventories. It consists of 3 parts. Part 1 specifies requirements for organizational level quantification and reporting of emissions and removals. Part 2 provides guidance for businesses for quantifying, monitoring and reporting emissions reductions or removal enhancements. And the third part, it focuses on the validation and verification of greenhouse gas assertions, ensuring credibility and reliability in reporting. CDP, formerly known as Carbon Disclosure Project and PAS 2060, are other examples of methodologies that are commonly used, which all essentially demonstrate carbon emission disclosures and environmental impact. By implementing these methodologies, organizations can enhance their carbon management practices, meet regulatory requirements, and demonstrate their commitment to sustainability. So onto the tools used then for calculating carbon emissions for your business. You can refer to your workbook for the links and guides to all the tools that I'm about to talk through. So starting off with the GHGP, the Greenhouse Gas Protocol Corporate Accounting and Reporting Standard. It provides requirements and guidance for companies and other organizations preparing a greenhouse gas emissions inventory. It was designed with the following objectives in mind: to help companies prepare an inventory that represents a true and fair account of their emissions through the use of standardized approaches and principles, to help simplify, reduce the costs of compiling an inventory, to provide businesses with information that can be used to build an effective strategy to manage and reduce emissions, and lastly, to increase consistency and transparency in carbon reporting among various companies and greenhouse gas programs. The data collection side of it then, effective data collection is critical for accurate carbon auditing. Having all the data in one place ensures that calculations are based on comprehensive and accurate information applicable to the company reporting. Carbon auditing is split into 3 scopes, scopes 1, 2 and 3. And the steps for data collection we would sort of recommend would be within 3 steps. The first one being having a centralized data system. So implementing a system where all your activity data is collected and stored. Your second part to that then would be regular updates, ensuring that your data is updated regularly to reflect current operations. And lastly, verification, verifying the accuracy and completeness of the data collected. Moving on then to the DESNZ conversion factors, otherwise known as the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, formerly known as BES. Its information guides you to the greenhouse gas emissions from various activities. These factors are essential for translating activity data into CO2e, which is known as carbon dioxide equivalent emissions. The equation to work that out then is your emissions, which is your TCO2e, which is tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, is your activity data multiplied by a conversion factor. And to complete a calculation, you'll need 2 things: your activity data, which is your information about the quantity of your activities. So it'll be your fuel consumed in litres or the amount of electricity or gas that you've used. and 2, the conversion factors. So these are specific values provided by DESNES for different activities and fuels. So by using these tools and following these steps, organisations can enhance their carbon management practices, ensure accurate reporting, and demonstrate their commitment to sustainability. So resources make everything easier, which we've broken down into 3 areas. Educational materials, such as what was discussed earlier, the Greenhouse Gas Protocol Guide, and ISO guidance documents provided in your workbook helps in how to collate, measure, report, and react. Online platforms, such as CarbonFit. And thirdly, free calculators, such as the one on the CarbonFit website for an annual check. And of course, there are other free reporting tools out there, albeit unverified and not as good in some cases as doing it yourself with all the materials, data, and guidance at hand. You also have support networks and forums such as NI Chamber, Invest NI, FSB, which is the Federation for Small Business, informative newsletters, and events locally for education and awareness. And again, refer to your workbook for additional links and resources on that. So moving on to how to read a bill and what does it mean. Energy from utility bills is usually in the format of kWh, which is kilowatt hours. And there's just a price set against this from your supplier to which you'll get billed on, which makes up about 40% of your bill. Billing periods are important to keep note of, whether it's daily, monthly, or quarterly, and the meter types associated with your business as operations and setups vary between businesses. For example, if you're not on a fixed price, it would be within your interest to view the pricing daily or on a monthly basis. Or on the other hand, if your business operates, usually of the daytime hours between 9 and 5 with no changes, then monthly or quarterly review is fine. Quarterly is for usually small meters, sometimes domestic setups within a commercial premises. Keeping that in mind, your read types are crucial as the amount on your bill will be derived from your meter reads. If you do not submit meter reads to your supplier or NIE, you'll be billed on estimate readings based on the previous 12 months of what the meter was historically using. If you do provide reads, you'll be billed for what you actually pay, nothing over and nothing under. And this stays away from credits and debits on your invoices, which just keeps it cleaner in the long run for your calculations for your carbon emissions. If your business was within a certain industry, such as manufacturing or operations construction, your meter may provide its own meter reads, which are known as like half-hourly meters or DM meters. So that makes your billing obviously a lot more easier, which is 100% accurate. I mentioned earlier that energy is typically 40% of an invoice. The other 60% is made up of pass-through costs. And these costs are for the likes of NIE who own and maintain the lines and for the transmission and distribution of that energy for the operators such as Sony and Simo. And there's around 10 to 15 pass-through costs, which are simply passed through to the end user to be able to get your natural gas or electricity. The year in terms of energy, specifically for electric, is made up of winter months and summer months. So depending on your business, you may use more in the winter due to less daylight hours, increased heat production, and just the general increased demand of the season. This all has an effect on your price, which is on your bill, which is why it's typically more expensive in winter months. And once you start recording your own data, you'll start to see the trends of when you use and when you don't use. So typically for majority of businesses, summer months, they'll be using less, which obviously why it's more cheaper because there's more heat and more light. Depending on your meter type, you may have energy usage for your consumption split into periods, which are known as peak periods, day, night, and evening and weekend periods. And there's usually a different price set against each time band. So if you have your data or have someone who knows what they're looking at by analysing it, it will tell you when you use the most, and that will be on like a daily basis. So there's platforms out there such as CarbonFit, which can do that for you. And once you know what you're using per time band, that allows you to negotiate better prices with suppliers for the time periods for which you need the demand for. So for example, a manufacturing company we worked with implemented a night shift as it was cheaper for them, as there was a cheaper rate at night time, even with the additional employee pay for out of hours. So having an understanding of your data and when you use it is beneficial. Once you have your data, it's important to always compare that time period against another point in time to see how well you're performing. You may need to introduce energy efficient measures to reduce energy and cost if you can't see any differences. A base year will always show you how far you've come and how much further you need to be progressing. Data is key, and the more of it you have, the better equipped you are to make decisions. Different sources have different emission factors associated with them due to how intensive the fuel or source being used is on a global scale in terms of carbon emissions. Calculations are easy once you have the right data and the right conversion factors to convert. Typically, calculating emissions is done kilowatt hours to kg CO2, which is kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent, and then to convert that into TCO2, which we'll touch on later here. That's usually the most common method to report carbon emissions on. It's A multiplied by B will give you C. So this is an example of a gas invoice on the left using 327,475,000 kilowatt hours of energy, which is circled in black, and an electric invoice on the right, which in this example you can see has two sites. The top site using 18,366 for that month. Just to note also, it shows you the amount on this bill from this certain supplier of what you've used over the last 12 months, which makes it a bit easier for you. And different suppliers will have different ways to show their data, some obviously better than others. So if you have your own invoice to hand, or if you're able to just put your hand on one at the minute, now would be the time to get that out. And if not, we've provided a few copies within your workbook for examples. We'll just give everyone just a moment. Hopefully you might have one or two just saved on your desktop. And if not, hopefully you're able just to open ours there as well. So here's an example of a calculation that we've already completed for natural gas, which is known as scope 1, and for electricity, which is scope 2. So this example has used 327,475 kilowatt hours of energy. And when you multiply that by the conversion factor, which you can find in your workbook, we've detailed that in this example, which is 0.1843. It gives you 60,353. This is kilograms of CO2e. So to convert this to tons, as per the guidance and the reporting for global carbon reporting emissions, you have to divide that by 1,000, which will give you 60.35 tons of carbon dioxide. For the electric, the same principles applied. You take the 645,863 and multiply it by the conversion factor. In the situation for this year, it's 0.2071. That equals 13,375 kilograms of CO2. And then if you divide that again by 1,000, that will give you 133.75. So here you can see in this exercise for converting your bill readings shown in litres to carbon. The fuel source here in this situation is kerosene, and this particular company has used 200 litres. So in order to convert your litres to kilowatt hours, you have to use a fuel property conversion. So for kerosene, it's 10.30, and all these fuel property conversion factors are available within the documents and guidance links as well. If you multiply the 200 litres by the 10.30, it will give you the amount of kilowatt hours in this situation, which is 2,060. And then once you've done that conversion, you now have your kilowatt hours, which is your energy. You're then ready to convert that into carbon emissions. So that's your kg CO2e, which ultimately then leads you to your TCO2. So you can see here from your initial calculation of litres to kilowatt hours, you've resulted in 2,060 kilowatt hours. You multiply that by the conversion factor of 0.2468, and that gives you 508.408 of kg CO2e. Once you divide that by 1,000, that leaves you with half a ton essentially of carbon emissions. So for the next webinar, if you could do a rough calculation of your own carbon footprint in order to set targets, this will be helpful as you'll be brought through this in more depth in webinar 3. Thanks everyone for listening, and if you have any questions, feel free to put them across in the Q&A box for me to answer at the end.
Thank you so much for that, Aaron. That's fantastic. We are now at the stage where we're ready to move on to our interview piece with today's case study. Representative is Steph McAvoy. Steph, can I just check, are you available at all for camera? I know you're out and about today.
No, I'm not, Danielle. This computer doesn't have a camera function.
Today's is an opportunity to talk a wee bit more around that journey. Steph, a lot of the time when we are engaging with our case study clients, they'll tell us a wee bit about their own personal journey. Perhaps you can set the scene by just telling everybody a little bit about yourself, and your organisation.
Yep. So I am Steph, the founder of ESG Made Easy and Reap Agri, which are two companies that were previously known as one company in Farm and Carbon. I am an agri-food sustainability consultant, and I work with a variety of businesses in the agri-food sector and also across adjacent industries. So maybe transport that focuses with agri-food, or other organizations that kind of have that agri-food connection.
Okay. And can you tell us a wee bit about your experience with that sustainability journey, whether that be your own or working with other businesses? Typically, where is the starting point for an organization on that journey?
I think the most important thing for a company is to know where they want to go to, where they want to end up. So typically organizations sort of start this journey because a client or a key supplier, there's some sort of request for either a net zero commitment or a better understanding, or this might even be a regulatory request, but typically they start with a need from their market. So kind of considering a competitive, or like what the companies around you want, and that stakeholder side of thing, I think, is important before you get bogged down in things that you maybe are or are not doing in your own organization.
Yeah, you touched on a few elements there as to where the starting point might be for businesses. Perhaps it would be useful. Could you share a wee bit more about some of the key drivers that businesses are faced with at the moment?
Yeah, so businesses of a certain size are obviously facing different regulatory requirements. They can change across every sector. So what what they need to do can vary. But I think there's a lot of external pressures on business, and with that comes, I suppose, a pressure to understand a lot of these words and terms and kind of know the difference between something that's very standardized, like greenhouse gas protocol, that's across everything, compared to maybe something quite niche like EcoVadis. So really just trying to understand their landscape, their sector, and what parts of sustainability are going to be most relevant to them.
And would you say, in your experience, that the drivers are they significantly different for micro and SMEs compared to larger businesses, or really is there a lot of similarity and crossover? Perhaps the regulatory requirements change, but what about the other drivers? Do they vary?
I think they do vary. I think that within a supply chain, so say we're at the top of the food chain, and specifically my industry would be retailers or supermarkets, and their expectation of what a small business can do versus a business with a lot more resources are very forgiving. So I do think that it does depend on the business size, and it's similar to most things, like your financial accounts are massively different in a huge regulated multinational business compared to, a local SME. So that level of detail, I think it's a good analogy, and sustainability so often crosses lines with financial reporting and financial information. But in that way, they're quite similar to each other. The expectation of SMEs is typically smaller. And then obviously for more complex businesses, it can be something where they need a 24/7 in-house resource to really understand this and how it applies to them.
Yeah, and I suppose just bringing it back, because obviously the focus of what we're here today for is to really drive that transition towards net zero, carbon reduction within businesses. Like, are you finding actually there is a push again across all sectors, across all business sizes to really start to address that within their businesses?
Yeah, and I think there's a real payback on doing so as well. People who own businesses or run businesses or in positions of seniority meet the other people in their industry, they have conversations, and if you know that another organization that has a similar structure was able to save XYZ or was able to have a little competitive advantage or maybe retain a contract that you might have lost last year, there's definitely motivators that are economic, in one sense, that actual money that you could save or invest and get a return on investment from, or potentially in a more nuanced economic way is the benefits in the market of doing that.
Okay. And in terms again of the businesses that you work with, like how are they finding doing those carbon audits?
Um, I think it depends on the business. I have some organizations that are totally happy to do it by themselves, and then some that maybe struggle not with the task itself, but with the confusing language around it. So they might need a bit of a hand. They have all the information there, as was just demonstrated. You just need your bills and the access to the conversion factors. But maybe trying to connect the two or correctly categorize their business operations in that scope 1, 2, and 3 format can be just a little bit confusing if you're not totally familiar with all of the terminology.
Yeah, yeah. And again, in your experience and thinking, about those clients that you're working with and those businesses that you're working with on that particular net zero or carbon reduction journey, like, is there, any easy wins that you could share with the people here today, or, any areas that tend to be a little bit more challenging, and any advice you might have on that?
Um, I think that waste is one that is potentially sometimes overlooked. I'm not saying it's easy, but you definitely, if you analyze it in the business, a lot of times you realize that just through process or a misguided process potentially, you could there's waste providers that actually do a sort of rebate system if you recycle well. So again, you get rewarded for good behavior. And the reason why people maybe don't recycle well or don't separate well is just an operational, not having two bins. But the market has obviously changed. Like you can literally fit 2 or 3 bins for segregation in the size of what would previously have been one larger bin. So I think actually though those kind of things, it's low hanging fruit. It saves you money, it potentially earns you money from your waste, which is great. And also by having that maybe analysis of it, you could actually establish that that thing shouldn't be a waste at all. Maybe there's someone else that you could maybe collaborate with, like international synergies, and like find out a place where that could go rather than be a waste. I do think that the maybe carbon footprinting and understanding that is slightly more complex and is maybe just a little bit more difficult for a business to do by themselves, unless they have someone who has the time to really get familiar with that terminology and all those things.
Yeah, I suppose that is the beauty of this particular program, is that they are able to access such expertise really within the business to really help them hone in on that particular thing, especially if sometimes can present, those challenging elements. I mean, another element to it is, and I touched on this within the last webinar when we were chatting with our guest, is the idea of you can't manage what you don't measure. Like when it comes to setting smart targets or key performance indicators, like what advice maybe would you share with today's guests and attendees?
Yes, I actually had a conversation with a client this morning about this. don't set ambitious targets if you do not have an ambition in the business to change. So it was an organization that have just only started to look at their carbon footprint, try to understand what it means for them, and they're maybe having they're contemplating alternative energy or switching to a renewable tariff, but not totally committed to it. And where it's one person's job to do their carbon footprinting and to do the collection of that data, and they as one person would love to say, oh well, now we have the data, we're setting this target or we're doing this, and that can be really misinformed if you don't include the rest of your business in it. Because when you make these commitments, particularly external ones like through the SME Climate Hub or through SBTI or another standard maybe that your supply chain has requested, when you make those commitments, you have to be able to deliver on them. So while I think that lots of businesses aren't challenging themselves enough and could deliver comfortably, I also think it shouldn't be a decision that you make too hastily, and maybe it would be better to have buy-in, internal buy-in, know that it is deliverable, and then want to go out and shout about it. Because SBTI is a good example of a standard retailers are looking for. The amount of businesses that have paid their $14,000 to commit and have had to withdraw those commitments after 2 years because they're obviously not realistic or they weren't going to work. So I think do all your work first, do all your homework, get all your ducks in a row in-house, and then go out to the world and start shouting about what it is you're doing and want to do and have targets for.
Yeah, I suppose that really touches on the R within SMART targets as people talk about. But I think also it's an interesting, I suppose, position to be in, because we are actually at a stage where we do need to start setting ambitious targets. Because we're all going to have to work much harder and hitting those targets, hitting those net zero ambitions within the timeframes that we've got left. I guess, is it more a case of really looking at the long term and breaking those down into short, medium, and long term goals? So dealing with those low hanging fruit elements first, finding your pace, finding your feet, and then keep on moving, getting more and more ambitious.
Yeah, and with every level of ambition, you can actually sustainability is something that can be so such an opportunity for a business. And I think so often, because it is kind of it does have this unique vocabulary, and people maybe are not that bought into it, or there's a misconception that it's just all hard work, it's all work, no play, like there's not going to be any reward for doing this. But actually, with every iteration of a sustainability strategy, you could be doing things that make you more efficient, which with efficiency comes cost efficiency, and then you can afford the next level of it. Like, I think it really can be that iterative, and absolutely people do need to start now, they do need to set targets, they do need to get going. But I think at the same time, in my view of it, or at least maybe in our industry, there seems to be a lot of people that shout with banners of, oh, I've this and this and we're committed to this, and actually within the 2 years, because you only have 2 years to prove that you can do what you've said you're going to do, there's no evidence there to back it up. So I think it is absolutely necessary that we all start, but with every iteration of sustainability strategy, you can actually work on the things that are going to help your business, and then think less about the marketing and more about the actual efficiency or operational efficiency. And I think that's probably a good place to go from.
Yeah. Okay. And I asked this during our last interview piece. I'm going to ask you as well, Steph. What would be your closing tips or advice for everyone here today? What one thing or two things would you tell everybody when it comes to that transition towards net zero that you think might be really worth considering?
I definitely think, like, reconsidering it in your mind or challenging your thoughts on it. Talk to people in your industry. The amount that net zero targets and sustainability targets can change from industry to industry. For example, if you're in a services company and your primary offering is like, maybe professional services, it's actually really, really easy to do this, and it's kind of a no-brainer to just put the effort in and make your infrastructure much more efficient so that you can be net zero, because it's such a differentiator. I appreciate that in manufacturing it can be a little bit more difficult, but at the same time, we're simultaneously experiencing like Industry 4.0 and smart technology and other things that they can help your organization just to really streamline and to be as effective as possible. So like don't just don't just let yourself be comfortable in your thoughts or opinions on this. Challenge yourself, read about it, reach out to people in your industry, look for best practice in your industry or in your location, or other comparative businesses that you can kind of look into. And some of the networks that were mentioned, the NI Chamber or FSB, are great places to kind of see who's put their head above the pulpit and talking about it, but reach out in your network and see what other people are doing, because we can definitely learn from that.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much, Steph. You're right. I suppose it's an absolute no-brainer. And I guess at the end of the day, everybody here is very, very lucky to be able to avail of the free support that is available through the Mid-Southwest region's programme Driving Net Zero. So as Steph has also touched on, those breakfast events, remember there are still spaces and you can register for those via the website, which is midsouthwestregion.org/net-zero-transformation. And Steph, other than that, all I can say is thank you ever so much for your time today. I know you're exceptionally busy, but it has been great to have your expertise involved in this morning's session. So
thank you so much, Danielle. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Okay, everybody, now is your opportunity to hit us with your Q&As. So whether that be questions for the wider Carbon Fit team, anything around the programme, it could be specific to Aaron or Steph's presentations and interview pieces there this morning. Don't be shy. Open up the Q&A tab at the top of your screens and get typing. I just give a couple of moments. Oh, sorry, Aaron.
I was just saying, where them questions are coming in, just want to note that also from today, as you've mentioned at the start there, that after you complete this week's workbook, there is going to be 4 more webinars, and with that comes 4 more workbooks, which are going to have loads more resources, materials to help, all these businesses on their net zero journey. So.
Yeah, yes, that's true, Aaron, and it will really help. It will really help everybody with those building blocks as well, and creating, I suppose, a really viable strategy towards your own net zero reduction plans and journeys. Okay, let's see what we've got coming in. So, if I just start to take a few questions here, we've one that's come in this, I think this is probably for the Carbon Fit team, seems one that maybe anybody could tackle. How does completing a net zero plan benefit my business in the short term?
So I guess one of the things by having a net zero plan, there's loads of different benefits and loads of different reasons, I guess, why a business would be doing it. But in the short term, one of the things that we're sort of seeing is businesses that are part of other businesses' supply chains, which would be coming into scope 3, are increasingly asking their key customers, their key clients for their net zero plans, and with that comes their carbon reduction plans and their carbon footprint certificates. And that's because everyone is being evaluated. Everybody's on this journey to net zero for 2050, and it's about how we're getting there. So for businesses that do have that, they're ahead of the time. They're able to pinpoint, within that, the recommendations to which they need to be sort of undertaken in order to, increase energy efficiency and improve their carbon emissions, and I guess other factors such as risk mitigation. We've also seen examples there of having a net zero plan. We have been able to help companies obtain sustainability linked loans, so you're getting a lower percentage rate on your loan from the bank, as opposed to not having this in place. It's just you're starting to see companies are having that incentive for companies that do have X, Y, and Z in place are going to benefit greatly from others, I suppose.
Yeah, and just you were chatting through there some of the different elements where it's going to be really, really beneficial. You touched on the idea of supply chain or procurement. We must have somebody here in the room today who has already come across this as an issue. They've mentioned that they have signed up to the webinars but need to provide emissions to their client by October. Is there any further support or way to expedite that at all?
Yes, if you're within the MSW region, and within the three sectors there for agri, manu, and construction, if you do sign up to the phase 1, phase 2, the baseline net zero program, there is a 6-week timeline for the calculations of emissions. So that would get that organisation what they need for that October time period, which has been requested there. So there's a quick turnaround from start to finish on this. So,
Yeah, very doable then.
yes, but as you said there, like supply chain, lots and lots of companies are being asked for this, and it's only going to come more and more down the line. And it's simply just due to companies reviewing their supply chain. We're starting to see companies reviewing, putting their services out to tender again. One example that we were working with, a large banking organization, and they are evaluating the company that's delivering the paper to them based on fuel vehicles or hybrid or electric, and that's falling under their supply chain, so because that has a big impact on their emissions, and anything that they can do to sort of reduce, monitor, target, and react, I suppose, they're doing that. So I guess that sort of falls part of that.
Okay, we have another, let's see, how many have we got here? Well, maybe we won't have time for them all, but if we could get through, I think we've got 3 perhaps here. In relation to green tariffs, is there a good time to change with pricing throughout the year?
So yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that we would specialize in here. The first sort of question you ask yourself would be, are you in contract? Some suppliers will put a contract date on their bill, or you can simply just ask your supplier for when the contract expires. Some suppliers do allow you to switch to a renewable tariff during the year, but you're always best starting clean for whenever your renewal period comes up. Obviously, pricing for your electricity and pricing for your gas changes daily. So, the more later you leave it coming towards the winter months of November, December, January, February, the more pricier the prices are going to be that you'll be getting from your supplier. So if you're within the months of March to October, you do avail of keener rates, and that's simply just due to more daylight hours, and global events that are happening within the world. We've seen there the crazy spikes of energy commercially and domestically 2 years ago during COVID. So some people are still in contracts from that period. So in terms of is there a good time to change, it's something definitely to consider upon your renewal period. And just as like a tip, if your renewal period does fall within a winter month, ask your supplier, can you get a 6-month contract, which will bring you into the summer, and reprice during the summer then, and ask for that 12 or 24 month at that time, because you are going to get better rates.
Okay, great, perfect. We have 2 more questions, and I'm just conscious of time, so but also keen to try and get everybody's questions sorted. I see that the conversion factors are in the workbook for gas, electricity, and kerosene. Could you please tell me the conversion factors for petrol and diesel? Thank you.
Yes, so the conversion factors will be within the documents and links that we provided, but we can send them out individually as well for any requests that come through to even Anne-Marie's email there at the bottom, or Claudine's. We'll be able to send the file directly, but there is links also with that within the workbook, and you'll find other factors there. It's not just your diesel and petrol, it's factors for all of your scopes.
Perfect, thank you. And finally, now hopefully I understand this right. We use gas for welding. Can this be included in the carbon net zero, or is it just heating and electricity?
Yes, of course. So, in terms of carbon emissions, as I mentioned earlier, it's broken down between scopes 1, 2, and 3. Scope 1 would account for your data and carbon emissions such as the transport. So that's if your company owns any vehicles or leases any vehicles. It also factors in your natural gas supply, any liquid propane gas, any other welding gases. So you just mentioned, I think for that question, Danielle, would be in scope 1. Any, if your office has any aircon conditioning units, they get maintained every year from an external facilities. They'll give you a report of how much was at the top up. So scope 1 accounts for quite a lot of activity data, which you can refer to within the DESNES conversion factor spreadsheet. And scope 2 then is your electricity, which is coming from the grid, and any on-site or off-site generation that you're producing or purchasing. Again, that's all the information is broken down within the links within the workbook that we're providing as well. It is very easy to follow.
Okay, brilliant. Just to round up, thank you ever so much again to both Aaron for his expertise and for sharing all of those insights with you all today, and to Steph for her time as well. A reminder that there are the 3 key areas of support available. The next webinar, you can double check, it's on the website, but I believe that would be the 26th of September. Does that sound right, Aaron?
Yes, that's right, Danielle. That's
perfect. Correct. 26th of September, and it will be at the same time again, so starting at 1 o'clock. The 2 breakfasts are scheduled for September the 5th in Craigavon and Enniskillen on October the 17th. And don't forget, you can still register your interest to attend those. They are free, and it's via the website midsouthwest.org/net-0-transformation. And of course, there's also that one-to-one bespoke business support with the Carbon Fit team themselves. So plenty of opportunities there for you. And I would definitely suggest you make the most of them. So thank you for your time this afternoon, everybody, and I hope you all have a lovely afternoon.
Thanks, Danielle. Thanks, everyone.